Welcome to Godzilla-THON, Tokyo SOS, the only direct sequel in the Millennium series and my second favorite in the Millennium series. And it ties into the original Mothra. Shujo returns, played by the same actor, which is a great nod to another classic kaiju film. Now, there is a new Kiryu, or Mecha G as they now call him, flight crew in this movie, and I've heard complaints about why would you not want to keep your best crew? Well, where I live, our police and fire department are a part of public safety. Every 6 months or so, they alternate between police and fire. I think we have a similar thing here where there's an A and B crew, and every so many months, they alternate. And it just so happened that alternation came up, and the crew got sent to America. We do see the previous Mechagodzilla pilot. We don't see the father and daughter, but because they're not seen in this film at all, leads me to believe that they hit it off so well and they're probably married by this point, and that's why we don't see them. They're heading to America with her so they can be together as a family. Just my thought. Now, in the beginning, we see the U.S. naval base. Blah. Don't you hate it when you forget what you're gonna say? See a radar blip, which turns out to be Mothra. Meanwhile, we see this film's main character, one of the technicians on Mechagodzilla, building a model plane with his nephew. Their grandfather is Shujo, and the Shobijin, the twin fairies, appear, and they want Mechagodzilla laid to rest at the sea because they believe using Godzilla's DNA through the bones upset the natural balance, and that Mothra will fight Godzilla for them. Now, we see Mothra, and this is one of the best Mothra designs ever in this movie. That little picture there doesn't do her justice, but it's basically an updated take on the original design. She doesn't look like the toy she looked like in GMK. For my money, my favorite Mothra is Armored Mothra, which I think Godzilla would be in over his head if he faced. Those of you that had seen Rebirth of Mothra 3 will know what I'm talking about. But that's a story for another review. Now, the grandfather goes to the Prime Minister and shares his concerns, and the Prime Minister does agree that once Godzilla's defeated, the Mechagodzilla program must be scrapped, but in the meantime, they can't give up their only defense. We see one of the co-pilots for Mechagodzilla because if you'd seen the previous film, you know Mechagodzilla's remote controlled and there's these fighter jet type things. Not only do they carry Godzilla, but it's a pilot and co-pilot type thing. And the co-pilot in the back seat of the cockpit is the one that controls Mechagodzilla. Well, our main character knows one of the one pilot who pilots the jet itself, and there's one scene I like where she's talking to him and she's like teasing him, like you can tell she's interested in him, but she's like, You're too obsessed with machines, you're even crazy about cannons." The main pilot and this character have a little bit of a conflict. He doesn't like that his grandfather wants Mechagodzilla scrapped, and he kind of has an issue with the pilot because, as he put it, he's a good pilot, but the way he treats his machines, it's a wonder he brings anything back. Mechagodzilla's still damaged, and they wind up having to put a hyper maser in it because they can't get a synthetic diamond in time to repair the absolute zero system, so the zero cannon's gone, as well as there's no more reference to the power time limit in this. They could have explained it's got a miniaturized nuclear reactor or something in it to just explain that away. One of the continuity issues in this film. But there is one point where a giant sea turtle kaiju called a Chimerish washes up dead, and there's a nice nod to Son of Godzilla because they mention it was discovered by such and such scientist on Solgal Island. They determine that it was killed by Godzilla. Then we get Godzilla destroying a nuclear submarine. And here's the time. Here's where just Godzilla's arrival is imminent. Godzilla shows up on Tokyo, and the Prime Minister's hesitant to launch Mechagodzilla. It turns out that, I forget which character, but the pilot that's controlling Mechagodzilla is related to one of the cabinet members, and there's a nice scene where the younger Shujo, the mechanic, gets called to the Parliament building. And the way they do the lighting from behind, I have to disagree with this scene, because it makes it look like he's in trouble, but then they talk to him, look, speak freely to us. This isn't formal. You're not in trouble. Do you think Mothra will fight for us? And he explains, I think scrapping Mechagodzilla is a mistake. Well, now that Godzilla's showing up, the Shujo's youngest grandson, who's still in school, takes the desk, and the father had a little Mothra crest type thing. I had to pause it to grab some visual aid, but not exactly like this one. It's more of the classic design, but he explains to his grandson, when this symbol is drawn anywhere on the planet, Mothra will appear. Well, he looks in his desk as they're evacuating, and it's missing, and he realizes the grandson took it. Well, the grandson uses desks at the school to make the symbol to call Mothra. Well, Mothra and Godzilla fight, and I have to say again, they went back to her classic powers. She doesn't even have the Stinger attack from GMK. Let Mothra keep the energy attacks. It makes her a more credible threat to Godzilla. I mean, just the physical attacks are not bad, but the energy attacks just give her that much more of a sting. Well, the Mothra-Godzilla fight goes on, and Mothra does pretty good, but starts getting beat pretty bad. They launch Mechagodzilla, and I used to think this fight scene between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla wasn't in the same league as the previous film. I'd say they're on par, but to say against Mechagodzilla's fight scene is better than Tokyo SOS is like saying Bret Hart's a better professional wrestler than, I don't know, Bruno Sammartino. Both are phenomenal, and they're in an elite league. To say one's better than the other, at that point, it's still something to brag about, but it's not like saying this fight scene's better than the fight scene in against Gabra in Son of Godzilla. Well, eventually Mothra's eggs hatch, and we get a cool rarity. Mothra gets to interact with her young. The only other time this has happened was in Mothra Rebirth Part 1. Well, we get some more cool back and forth with Mechagodzilla fighting, and gets damaged, so the younger Shujo has to take a bike and go and repair Mechagodzilla. Meanwhile, we get the larvas moving, and what I like is we don't just no longer see the crawling like that. The larvas hop around, and one bites onto Godzilla's tails. Is it a Mothra thing that they're drawn to biting on tails of creatures bigger than them? But anyway, Shujo, when Mothra bites onto the tail, she causes the subway system to collapse. Shujo loses his toolkit, and he sees the Shobijin, and he's like, look, we need Mechagodzilla now. We don't have time to discuss this. And they use their powers to find the toolkit. He gets in Mechagodzilla, and there's a funny scene where they're helping him with schematics, and one of the Texas, she goes, I know, let's bypass this junction. And the other guy just immediately, wait, I got it. We bypass this junction and gets the credit. It's dirty, but it's a dirty move on his part, but her reaction does make it humorous, and it's not done in a mean-spirited way. It's done in a funny way. Well, while he's in Mechagodzilla, the door gets damaged. So he can't get out, and he's prepared, if need be, to go down with the ship. He lies and says he's out. And the fight continues. We see Mechagodzilla has a drill-like hand, and he drills it in Godzilla's gut and hits him with the hyper maser. Then the machine locks up, but this buys the Mothra larva enough time to cocoon him up. Anyway, I was saying, Godzilla gets cocooned up and they order Mechagodzilla to fire a couple maser shots to kill him. Well, Mechagodzilla goes berserk and grabs Godzilla and starts flying to the ocean. In the pilot, she gets the realization that he's still in the Mechagodzilla, so she blasts the door so he can escape because he's still prepared to die, but she's not willing to let him die. And neither is the Mechagodzilla pilot, who's now earned respect, gained more respect for him, so they blast the door, and there's a point where the Mechagodzilla is flying and it turns upside down, and you see on the computer where it says goodbye to him. He flies out, the co-pilot who controls Mechagodzilla hits the ejection seat. Sorry about that again. If there was odd cuts, I had to pause it so I can speak when someone's not walking by the room or going in and out. Well, anyway, he saves the Shujo, and he talks about how she saved me, and the guy's like, oh, I had something to do with it too, and there's now a level of respect and camaraderie between those two, and I like how it went from hostile and neither one had the most respect for each other to more of just a camaraderie, because even before Mechagodzilla launches, he warns him, hey, be careful, Mechagodzilla hasn't had the final checkup, and not arrogantly, but just in a reassuring way. Well, there is arrogance, but still reassurance too. He says, don't worry, my pilot skill can overcome any mechanical issues, and the movie ends, and we get to see a post-credit scene that they still have Godzilla's DNA. Tokyo SOS. Is it as good as against Mechagodzilla? Well, yes and no. These two really feel like two halves of one whole movie. If you really had to pressure me, I would say that it was against Mechagodzilla first and Tokyo SOS second. Before watching this again, I forgot how much I really enjoyed this film. I highly recommend it. Get this set. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit dislike, hit the notification, and stay tuned for the next one. Godzilla Final Wars. We are winding down. Final Wars 2014, Shin, and hopefully Monster Planet. Over and out.